Hey everyone, so today I'll be presenting the first 4 chapters of Atonement. Let's start off by talking about the context of this piece. So the story starts off in 1935, a gap between the world wars. At this time, the world was very much in danger of breaking out into another world war, and since Britain was a very powerful nation, their involvement was practically inevitable. Hitler and Mussolini had adopted an aggressive foreign policy, so there was a heavy political atmosphere that cast a cloud of tension on the world. The beginning of this novel offers a peek into society prior to this transformation. In the Britain that we see in Atonement, there is a rigid social structure that constitutes the opportunities that are offered to different social classes. There was an upper class, middle class, and lower class. Hierarchy was hereditary. Therefore, it was practically impossible for lower classes to move to the upper class. The Tallis family is considered to be part of the upper middle class, since they own land and have servants, whereas the Turner family falls into the working class. This may present problems for the ambitious Robbie, since he has aspirations to be a doctor, but his social status does not put him at an advantage for working toward this goal. As the story continues on, subtle interactions and notions reveal how much privilege and immunity is granted to the upper class. As for women in the story, it's interesting that McEwen chose to focus the story on 2 female characters. Bryony and Cecilia are the 2 individuals whose perspectives and opinions are most explicitly described. This is a unique choice considering the fact that women were still not considered socially equal to their male counterparts during the time that this story takes place. At one point, it's even mentioned that women were never even granted degrees for pursuing higher education. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how gender roles play out in the story, in comparison to all the previous stories we've looked at. Okay, so now I'm going to do a quick recap of the story so far. The first chapter starts off with an introduction to Bryony Tallis, a 13-year-old girl with an imaginative mindset. During this time, we learn that the Quincy cousins are staying at the Tallis household due to familial issues. It also becomes known that Bryony loves to write, and she has actually just finished writing a play that she plans to perform for her brother, Leon, when he returns to the state. Based on what we learn about Bryony, it's clear that she's a perfectionist and her desire to impress her brother has made it so that she's absorbed by the project at hand. In her head, she saw herself as Arabella, but out of pity she cast Lola to play her role. The other 2 acting positions are given to her other cousins, Jackson and, I can't pronounce this, but I think it's Pierrot. In the second chapter, the story shifts to focus on Cecilia Tallis, Bryony's sister. We soon learn that Leon plans to visit with a wealthy businessman named Paul Marshall. To impress Marshall, Cecilia decides to fill an heirloom vase with flowers for his room. During her trip to the estate's fountain, she encounters a distant acquaintance that she appears to have a weird disdain for, Robbie Turner. Their interaction hints that their relationship is a little bit more than what it seems, and they eventually share a very intimate moment where they clash in a manner that results in the vase breaking. In order to make Robbie feel guilty, Cecilia tries to assert her dominance by undressing to go jump into the fountain so she can pick up pieces of her shattered vase. As time goes on, Bryony's inner turmoil is revealed, and the rehearsals for her play only continue to disillusion her more. At one point, Cecilia even encounters a rattled Bryony that appears to be immensely in distress, but this interaction is mostly just brushed off. Sometime later, Leon and Paul Marshall finally arrive. Marshall definitely appears to be an odd character because it's almost impossible to determine whether he's likable or not. Cecilia can see this, and although the 2 initially get along, a day at the pool makes her realize that he's actually mentally lackluster. Sometime after, the family prepares for a dinner party that Leon tells Cecilia that he has invited Robbie to. It becomes clear that Cecilia does not really favor this choice, and she ends up getting into an argument with Leon over it. That's about all that happens in the first 4 chapters. A closer look at Bryony's play, The Trials of Arabella, reveals a lot of underlying personality traits about the 13-year-old girl. We only get bits and pieces of the exact text that she has written, but at one point we get a look into the prologue of the play. This prologue reads as, "This is the tale of the spontaneous Arabella, who ran off with an extrinsic fellow." Now, it's not directly obvious, but there are definitely a lot of parallels between the reality that Bryony is living and her work of fiction. However, there is one major flaw in how she perceives the characters that she's developed. It's mentioned multiple times that she has crafted Arabella to resemble herself, but the reality of the matter is that she's the polar opposite of the rebellious princess that she has imagined. Bryony likes structure and conformment. She likes routine and looks down upon the people around her. She can't fathom the idea of other people having the same complex thoughts that she has. On the other hand, Cecilia does not like conformment, and she wants to feel free. She has a natural demeanor that propels her to act in a manner that bewilders the people around her. Cecilia is what Bryony wants to be, but Bryony does not realize this. Cecilia is Arabella, and deep inside, it makes Bryony jealous, but she never acknowledges it. The relationship between Robbie and Cecilia is a bit odd, because it feels as if they're quite distant, and yet at the same time, they have a very intimate moment that reveals their underlying emotions. The vase that Cecilia takes to fill with water is described to a very great extent, so it's clear that it's more than just a simple object. When the vase is shattered, Cecilia makes the decision to disrobe and jump into the fountain in an extremely monumental fashion. This action not only makes Robbie take in the situation in an interesting way, but her actions also inspire wild ideas into the mind of Bryony, who has managed to steal a peek of their interaction from the window. Cecilia eventually manages to fix the vase, but it's impossible to erase the true damage. It's definitely going to be interesting to see if this vase reappears or serves as a symbol for certain relationships in the novel. And to end this off, I added a little clip of the interaction between Cecilia and Professor X at the fountain.
Do you mean one of your Bolshevik roll-ups? Beautiful day.
I suppose so. Too hot for me. Are you enjoying your book?
No, not really.
It gets better.
Fair fielding any day. Much more passionate. Leon's coming down today, did you know?
I heard a rumour.
Bringing a friend with him. Paul Marshall, the chocolate millionaire.
And the flowers for him.
Why shouldn't they be? Leon says he's very charming.
Mm-hmm.
The old man telephoned last night. He says you're planning on being a doctor.
I'm thinking about it, yes.
6 years of student life.
How else do you become a doctor?
You could get a fellowship now, couldn't you?
I don't want to teach.
You're first.
I said I'd pay your father back.
That's not what I meant at all.
Let me help with that.
No, I'm all right, thanks.
Take the flowers.
I'm all right.
Take the flowers.
I'm all right! You idiot. You realise that's probably the most valuable thing we own?
Not anymore, it isn't. Careful! I'm...
And finally, here are some questions to consider as you read along.